Everyone, welcome to the weekend edition of The Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me for this weekend edition of The Bullet, first up from Writing Shotgun with Charlie, Charlie's Gungrams, and a whole bunch of other things, Charlie Cook. Charlie, thanks for bringing us along for the ride, or coming along on the ride with us, man.
It is always a pleasure to be here with you and Alex, and even Mike.
I feel the same way
All right.
about me. About me.
All right. Next up from Arms Room Radio, which will be coming up here in just a little bit later today, and from the Rundown, and also several other things, we've got Mike Piwowarski. Mike, thank you as well for coming along today, man.
An honor and a pleasure, sir. It's always a wonderful time to be gathered with you fine folks.
And finally, from the Ooley Law Offices in Indiana, and fresh off his appearance yesterday on the Bullet, Alex Ooley.
Great to be with all of you. Charlie, Mike, Paul, looking forward to it.
All right, very cool. I want to remind everybody before we get started, if you're watching on the Polite Society podcast feed, either Facebook or YouTube, you can comment on the live video and we'll get your comments in. We'll discuss your comments on the air. If you're catching us anywhere else and you want to get a comment on the air, if you're watching us on the Ops Lens feed or anywhere else that we're picked up, tweet with the hashtag #TheBullet. And that actually gets to us the fastest. We'll get your comment up. We'll discuss your comments on the air. First up today, guys, what I want to talk about, I picked this up off of Bearing Arms. This is a Tom Knighton article. And apparently Governor Hochul out of New York isn't satisfied with messing with the concealed carry laws in New York. She sent out a tweet this week that she wants American Express, MasterCard, and Visa to create a special category for firearms purchases. And she wants to eliminate suspicious firearms purchases. Where I'm really concerned with this is that would give, for example, if I take my debit card, one of my debit cards, and I go to a casino, they can shut my debit card off because they don't allow transactions at casinos. I don't want Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover. I don't want them to be able to say, no, you're not going to spend any money at a gun store. I think this is a bad idea. Charlie, I'm going to start with you, man.
Yeah, the unelected governor of New York here. She's really overstepping her bounds because she's telling private businesses who they can do business with and what they're going to allow their clients and their customers to purchase. And this is unacceptable, like completely unacceptable. What if we had let's say we had a conservative non cannabis candidate, conservative in upstate New York or any state, and they said, "Hey, listen, you know what? We should not let credit card companies allow people to make purchases of marijuana or gummies at pot shops or dispensaries." It's really a huge overstep.
If it's legal, it's legal. Absolutely. Mike, what do you
Right.
think, man?
You know, not unprecedented, right? We saw the Obama administration do this with Operation Choke Point. They went to all the credit cards and all the banks and said, "Listen, we have these what we believe are moral turpitude issues of firearms, alcohol, tobacco," and said, "Don't sell to them." And in incredible amounts of credit card customers were put out. You were thrown out of bank systems. The FFL industry at the time went bet stuff crazy because they had to try and recover, and it happened on a Black Friday weekend, when they were trying to do all the sales. So that happened. It was an absolute push from the feds and their policy. What we've seen now, I believe it's in Texas, right? Is that we have the law in Texas now that says banks, if they want to do business with any municipality or government agency, they have to allow for all legal businesses because they had this issue going on down there as well. So this is, it's not unprecedented that this occurs. It's horrible. It sucks. They're private companies, but when the feds come and say we're gonna pull your your federal permits to transfer monies around, your EFTs. What else can they do? It's kind of being a rock and a hard place for them.
Absolutely. Alex, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, so obviously, like Mike said, they're private companies, and if they choose not to do business with a particular category of people or certain types of items, that's totally fine. But for the government to be pushing for these sorts of actions, I think is a step too far. I mean, we see that there are already so many impediments to the gun industry with advertising, with big tech or with other financial institutions that already have limitations in place. Indiana actually had a proposed bill about this issue earlier this year. It didn't pass, but I thought it was had good intent. It said that a government entity could not contract with a financial institution if they discriminated against the firearms industry, either currently or in the future. So if government needed to procure the services from a financial institution, they could not do that if that financial institution took a anti-firearm position. That legislation didn't pass, but I thought it was interesting and sort of would help alleviate this sort of problem.
Texas and Louisiana passed that law, and it caused J.P. Morgan to pull up short and actually change some of they submitted letters to the governments of Texas and Louisiana saying we do not discriminate against gun businesses, yada, such and so forth. But whether they actually have the concrete proof, I don't know. I just know that Texas was prepared to stop doing business with J.P. Morgan, and it caused them to sit up and take notice.
And the other thing that's kind of sinister about this is that it's almost a form of pre-crime. There's nothing unlawful about purchasing firearms with a credit card or through some digital transaction. It's I guess trying to influence these companies to flag suspicious activity, and the question in the article points this out. What is that? What constitutes suspicious activity? Is it buying multiple firearms? Is it just one? Where do you draw the line? And I think this is just another step, death by a thousand cuts of trying to put impediments in place to law-abiding citizens possessing firearms and exercising their rights.
Well, and what if I go to store A and buy 1,000 rounds of 223, and then go to store B and actually buy a rifle? Well, both those are going to be, if I buy a lower level rifle, that's going to be about the same amount as 1,000 rounds of 223 right now. It's going to look like I'm buying multiple firearms. South Dakota, with my enhanced permit, I still fill out the 4473 for only one firearm, but to the credit card company, it's going to look like I'm buying multiple firearms on the same day. They're going to have incomplete information to start with.
Yeah.
This is. Go ahead.
Yeah,
this is
Mike.
It's going on. It's already going on. Listen, when Choke Point happened, I made friends with a couple of people from the credit card processing business side of it that just researching the story and have maintained in touch, and they formed their own company for credit card processing that was gun friendly, and it's been successful now for 8-10 years. Well, they recently got told by the feds and by their underwriters got told by the feds if they sell any 80%ers at all, they'll yank their licenses. So this is, it's all around the realm and everything they're doing. This administration just continues to lay this. I don't know if it's illegal or unconstitutional at this point. I don't think there's been a challenge to it, but it's certainly bad business practice, and it's certainly bully tactics. But there were plenty of people here recently got dropped because they happen to sell a legal part that the federal government's going after and attacking right now. So it's still happening.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things Tom pointed out in this article that I think is spot on is that if you have a nationwide bank, almost all of them have their headquarters in New York, specifically in New York City. And so if there's a statewide regulation, which Governor Hochul could theoretically do, that affects the entire nation, just as if the California Air Resources Board puts forward more exhaust regulations for your car. That's going to hit the entire nation because the car manufacturers can't afford to produce a California car and a rest of the country car, because California buys a good chunk of the cars for the entire nation. So, yeah, this. Tom pointed it out in his article. This is very, very dangerous.
There was a comedian a number of years ago that had a character on that they called him the slippery slope man. And he would go on, he would rant about how, well, if we do this, then it's a slippery slope to this, and it's, and then the whole thing unravels. One of the grocery stores I go to, one of the stores I frequent, has the self-checkout. And I'm personally fine with the self-checkout. I get its jobs and all that sort of stuff. My attitude for the self-checkout is you just go there with a few items because you want to get out of the store. If you got a cart full of things and you're doing the self-checkout, I don't think you're doing it right. But at one particular store, I think there's like 5 or 6 self checkouts. Only one of them takes cash. The rest of them take cards. So if we look at the slippery slope and say, hey, listen, you know what? You're buying too much sugary foods. Could the credit card cut you off because you don't have a healthy diet and you're buying ice cream and cake for your kid's birthday party, but that's too much sugar intake and that's not healthy foods. What are the odds that the credit card, the government could turn around and tell the credit card companies, hey, listen, you can only spend this much money on groceries. You can only buy these groceries. You have to buy kale, for God's sakes. You can't buy ice cream. And where's it going to stop?
Well,
but it's not theoretical. I mean, Governor or Mayor Bloomberg proposed it right there in New York City.
Well, yeah,
and it just
right
it didn't pass.
Well,
it was too much sugar. I'm sorry.
They did have a ban on. Didn't they have the big gulp ban? Didn't they have a ban on sodas of certain size in New York City?
I can't recall if it passed or it got overturned, but I know it's no longer in effect.
It is, because it's ridiculous. So he was saying that you cannot buy a 32-ounce soda, but you could buy two 20-ounce sodas, which means you're taking in more than the 32-ounce soda. You're spending more money. You're taking in more sugary drink, which is ridiculous if you're trying to limit people and make them healthier.
And here I sit with my 52-ouncer over here. So.
What about an ounce left?
Yeah, well, there was a little, just about that much. So I have backups. I do have backups here. Well, it doesn't show up on the green screen, but
that looks great on the green screen.
I'm telling you. And I've got backups to the backups that do show up on the green screen. It's an hour show. You got to give me a break. I want to get a comment in here. Kevin Sona, hey Kevin, good to have you tuning in. The attack on our rights are coming from all directions. I don't see it letting up anytime soon, unfortunately. I kind of agree with you, Kevin, but we need to keep fighting back. Part of that is bringing these things to light. And honestly, the other part comes up in November. Charlie brought it up. Kathy Hochul is unelected. She's running again in November. Nothing's saying she's going to win that election. So...
Unfortunately, she's not running for cover.
Yes. Right. Or from her parole officer.
Right. And the crazy thing with the whole, we're going to be the judge of what moral purchases are. The reason she became the unelected governor is because her predecessor was brought up on sexual harassment charges.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the team of people that are going to be judging our morality because we buy guns and we don't grope women on an elevator as the former governor does.
Yeah. Let's get one more comment in here because I think it's a great comment, but I'm going to get this comment in here. Kevin Sona came back and said, if you really want to torque Mike off, Just tell him the government will limit his bourbon consumption.
I don't know
Yeah.
if that's possible. I really don't.
Looks like you got nearly a lifetime supply behind you, or at least this weekend.
Yep. And listen, to round it off, we also on the radio show we just picked up a rum distiller also as a sponsor. So we're trying to broaden our horizons.
There you go.
Nice.
Now you just need to make a trip down to Mexico and get a tequila sponsor.
Yes, that might work.
Next story I want to talk about comes off of USAcarry.com. I found this one. Looks like the ATF is pushing that if you have a AR or AK pistol and you've got a brace for it, very soon you're going to have to now complete a ATF Form 1. Basically what that means is you're going to have to register that thing as a short barrel rifle. It means the owners of over 40 million braced weapons will have to spend up to a collective 160,000 hours, because it takes 4 hours to fill this thing out, registering their lawfully acquired firearms to comply with the Biden-Harris administration's new regulation. Moreover, gun owners may be required to pay a $200 tax per firearm just for complying with this new regulation, totaling up to $8 billion for the federal government. And the ATF reportedly processed 512,315 NFA forms in 2020. At that rate, assuming no further backlog and assuming all affected gun owners comply with the registration, it would take the ATF approximately 78 years to process all the pistol registration forms. I see what happening with this as the same thing as when New Jersey said, okay, all of your bump stocks are now illegal. Turn them in, and you've got till Friday. When Friday came in, I think they got one in the state.
Yeah, Massachusetts did the same thing, and I think they got 1 or 2 that people turn them in. I don't know that I've ever seen anyone at the range shoot with a pistol brace before. So I don't know that there's 40 million pistol braces out there.
You mean shoot with a pistol brace as a pistol brace, or actually shoot them with a pistol brace on it? Because
I see people on Facebook forums talking about these, but I think it's far and few between. I don't think there's 40 million people shooting that way.
I do not own one at this time, as far as the government knows. I have shot with one, and I'd rather have a real short barrel rifle. But yeah, they are out there. I've shot them before. Again, as far as the ATF and the government know right now, I don't have one.
And of course, this is just a scare tactic to get people to register their lawfully owned firearms. And I'm like you, Paul. I suspect if this goes into effect, that the compliance rate will be relatively low, and hopefully it doesn't go into effect. But with the current administration and the ATF as it currently exists, they're hungry to scoop up as many firearms and devices as they can, of course, with little or no benefit to preventing any crime.
Well, yeah,
it's a stupid law to begin with. Anyway, listen, I mean, maybe back in the day when people were cutting off shotgun barrels in 1934, and they had a old Mosin Nagant, they wanted to use a single action short barrel. It's ineffective. The rule is no good anymore. I can go out and get a FN 5.7 that carries 20 rounds on a 4-inch barrel and a pistol, and it does the same damage that an AR does. It's absolutely ridiculous that the ARs are still undergoing this kind of treatment when we have handguns right over the counter. I can go ahead and get with the same firepower in this. It's a ridiculous law. Even if it's not 40 million, it's 4 million, whatever it is. That's still 8 years, right? 7.8 years are going to take to get these things done. It's never going to happen. And we're going to have to just continue to cross those fingers for another one of them judges to throw a partial and then a full injunction at this and just stop it. It's just a waste of government time, and it's just a harassment of firearms owners.
Yeah, it absolutely is. When you were describing that, I was thinking to myself the old westerns where the guy was walking with the big trench coat, the
Yep.
and
the dusters,
the dusters, and he walks with a limp because he's trying to conceal the shotgun that he's carrying under the duster. And that's not something that happens in today's society. And I'm sorry, if I see somebody with a duster walking in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, they are going to get my attention. Just because they're weird, but they're going to get my attention.
But all the tattoos in the face are not going to get your attention.
I figured South Dakota is the place where you would wear dusters.
No, not unless you're going to the rodeo where, maybe. But, and they have them here, but.
I just figured it's one big rodeo up there. I guess maybe one day I'll have to come up there and see what it's like.
There you go. It's not like you're a pilot and you could go whenever you wanted or anything.
Well, there has to be a desire, though, as well, Paul.
This is your chance to go see a duster. Come on, man.
That's it.
Mike, go ahead, Charlie.
Go ahead, Alex. No, go ahead.
I was just going to build on Mike's point that adding these AR-style pistols to the list of NFA items or classifying them as short-barreled rifles is stupid. I agree with that. But just to take the point a step further, the NFA in its entirety, I think, is ridiculous, and adding another item to it is completely pointless. The NFA was created and adopted to help stem gang violence around the time of Prohibition, and that $200 tax was implemented back in 1934, and it is part of the IRS code. And that $200 tax has remained the same to this day, and I think for no benefit. There are short-barreled rifles, lots of them out there. There are lots of AR-style pistols with these braces, and I think it will be interesting to see what constitutional challenges come up with respect to this. But because I think there are enough short-barreled rifles and AR-style pistols that they would be considered arms that are in common use, as we know from the Heller case and more recently from the Bruin case. So I think that this sort of law and regulation will be challenged on that basis.
Well, let me have Alex hang tight, because we got a comment that I want you to speak on here real quick. Spartan 6 says, what are the chances if a person uses a pistol brace due to a physical disability, they could be exempt from these requirements? Could this be an ADA lawsuit?
I am not very familiar with ADA claims, so I can't speak to that. I think that from my perspective, the constitutional challenge would be the better challenge, but if you already have a disability, there may be an ADA claim. I just can't really speak to that.
Okay, and
Well,
we do this on the beginning of every Saturday or every Friday show when Alex is on. I forgot to do it this morning, but Alex is still here, so we should remind everybody that Alex is the only attorney here, and he's only attorney in Indiana. And so nothing. We're here for entertainment and education. We are not here for legal advice. If you need legal advice, go see an attorney in your jurisdiction. Do not rely on anything we're going to be giving out as legal advice. So,
Paul, I was told concerning the ADA issue, and I had this conversation. I started laughing when you brought it up. That the only way the ATF would give an exemption for the brace for the handicapped is if you actually show up with one arm. Then they would consider giving it to you. Otherwise, you're not getting one.
I know people that might hack off an arm to try to get that exemption. Just saying.
That's a long way to go to get your name in the books.
I'm telling you,
Now
man.
that's a slippery slope. Yeah, that's a slippery slope right there.
Literally giving up an arm to be.
Um, one more story I want to get to here, and this amazes me. We get the three of us together. We're almost halfway into the show. We got two stories down. Next story off the reload, the Stephen Gakowski story. I'm going to go deep into the story. I'm just going to quote a couple of statistics. Given that 31.1% of firearms owners have used a firearm in self-defense, this implies that approximately 25.3 million adult Americans have defended themselves with a firearm. English wrote in a preprint report on the study published in the Social Science Research Network, SSRN. Answers to the frequency questions suggest that these gun owners have been involved in a total of approximately 50 million defensive incidents. Assuming the defensive uses of firearms are distributed roughly equally across the years, this suggests at least 1.67 million defensive uses of firearm per year in which firearms owners have defended themselves or their property through the discharge, display, I think is probably the most common, or mention of a firearm, excluding military service, police work, or work as a security guard. However, English noted also points to a more realistic picture of defensive gun use than what's often shown in TVs or movie. Instead of an altercation with many shots fired and the assailant ending up shot, the vast majority of defensive gun uses do not involve the defender firing any shot at all. Brandishing a gun was enough to end the threat to the gun owner in 81.9% of cases.
Yep.
Wow. And again, this is something they want to take away from you. They want to take away your ability to say, I can defend myself. You picked the wrong target and have the bad guy go away.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of criticism of the number that Gary Kleck came up with of up to 2.5 million. But I think this study lends support to that because the study says 1.6 million and acknowledges that may be underestimating the amount. So I think that sort of gives more credibility to the 2.5 million number, and that guns are used for lawful purposes many times a year, and they're not reported in the media, and their utilization rate is completely underreported. So I think that this sort of news, this sort of study needs to get more attention than it does, and I'm glad to see that he's going to continue to do some more studies. And I think the end of the article said that he was going to make turn his studies into a book. So I'm interested to see what he comes up with.
Yeah, absolutely. And this study was done in 2021, repeated earlier this year, and so it looks like it's going to be an annual thing. I would be very curious to see how those numbers pan out year to year. Another part of this study that came out showed that, and we've talked about this on the show before, that gun ownership is rapidly diversifying. Women are becoming gun owners in a huge way. Minorities are becoming gun owners in a very huge way. I think that's a wonderful thing.
I think these sorts of studies help lend support to defending our rights, but I don't think our rights are dependent on these sorts of studies. And I think that's an important point to make, because whether or not I have an individual right is not dependent at all on whether other people exercise their rights. And so while I think this sort of information is useful and helps bolster our argument to protect our rights, I don't think our rights are dependent on these sorts of studies.
Agreed. Yeah, this is to counter the left's arguments. That's what this is for.
Exactly.
And it's we didn't have these numbers until recent. Remember, we always had DGUs, but we never knew the display percentage. I think the guess we'd all said was about 80-90%. So it's all right there. It's it works, and that's a hard number to figure out because of that 81.9%, I bet you close to them many of them, they're not reported as well. You have a display, the bad guy leaves, it's over with. I don't feel like messing around with the police, so you go on your merry way. It's a tough number to come up with. So great job on the research, but like Alex said, I think it's a counterpoint, piece of research to battle the other side. Our rights don't depend on it, but great piece of information. Good to finally see it from a reputable source.
Yeah. Charlie.
Yeah, absolutely. We see students all the time that they think that getting the gun's a magic talisman and they're going to just brandish it and they're not going to have to shoot anybody. Then you hear people on the flip side that are like, well, I was told if I pull a gun I have to shoot somebody. Not quite the case. If the bad guy decides he wants to change careers after you pull out your firearm, that's a good thing. And then, of course, we know this from all of the DGUs and everything from the Polite Society podcast and the show as well. You want to be the one who wins the race to call the police, because if you don't, then it becomes a he said, she said story. And whoever calls the police first gets to be the victim. So even if you are one of the people that has to use a firearm in self-defense and do not have to fire a shot, which is a great situation, you still want to make sure you call the police and let them know that something happened, even though they're not going to report it because it's not something that happened. So you're gonna call them to report a crime that didn't commit or that didn't happen, but you still want to give them a call to cover yourself.
I had it was about 2 years ago, and I've been in the advocate business for a while, and we got those that come to the advocate business after something happens to them, and those that just we end up here for it's our part of our job skills or whatever. But I had one happen to me after being in the business for a while. It was a DGU about 2 years ago, and it was a display. That's all it was, and it was someone who was clearly of the criminal element. And my first thought was, having been, in law enforcement, I don't want to sit here and be detained for 2 hours. I'm on the way to an appointment and all that. So I picked up the phone and called one of Alex's cohorts. I called my local gun attorney and gave it to him verbally over the phone. And he said, all right, got it down. Go carry on with your life. In case anything ever happens, we've got it on record. So I don't know if that's the best advice around town, but I think a lot of people don't call because they don't want to be delayed. Even if they could get the first call in and they're the victim, they don't want to stand there for 2 hours and listen to some cop that knows nothing about gun laws, which is usually what you end up with.
I was just listening to earlier today. I was listening to the show yesterday to the Bullet, and Alex said that a lot of times people talk themselves into getting into trouble.
Yep.
Yeah, more often than not, people talk themselves into trouble than out of trouble. And I'm amazed. I've done a lot of criminal defense work, and I'm amazed at the point that you made, Charlie, about the race to the telephone and calling 911. Criminals know that that's the dynamic, that's how the system works, that the first person to call 911 is often seen as the victim. And they will call, after they've committed a crime, they will call 911 because they know that they'll be seen as the victim. So it's incredibly important to call 911 if you've been involved in a defensive gun use. And the perpetrator may call before you, so make sure you're prepared to make that call as soon as you can.
Yeah, it's a tough spot because the people want to cooperate. You want to be a good person. Yep. Law enforcement shows up at the scene. I don't get too far off the topic, but law enforcement shows up at the scene. You want to cooperate. But like Alex said, and I've got 20 years doing that job, all right, you can't talk your way out of jail, but you can talk your way into it. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so the best thing you say when they show up on the scene is you just say one word over and over: lawyer. That's it. Well, sir, you're not being detained. We're just doing an investigation. Lawyer. That's, here's his card. I don't know what to tell you. Lawyer.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, Mike, I was going to go to you about that because I'm sure in 20 years of law enforcement, you've had people talk their way into jail with you.
Quite frequently. Quite frequently they do. Yeah. 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 And we're used to the, you deal with people all the time. And the joke was, well, I'm the victim here. And because I called first. Well, great. Here's the first call ribbon. You're still going to jail. You just, yeah. If you get an educated law enforcement officer out there, it's kind of comical to the cops that when they realize people say, "Well, I called first, so I'm right." Yeah. Here you go. Here's your ribbon. Thanks.
All right.
Yeah.
Nick, I want to
I
jump
was
to the
just
next. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go
sure.
ahead, Alex.
Oh, I was just we can make a whole topic out of how to what you should say to the police when they arrived after a defensive gun use. Massad Ayub is sort of the counterpoint in a lot of this. He tells people that they should say some, but only a very limited amount. And I think he gives good advice, but I think you have to be very well trained and be very disciplined to only say very limited amount. And I don't think most people can pull that off. In my experience, people cannot. They are panicked. The police arrive. They see that authority. They become more panicked, and they inevitably say things that they should not say, even if they're not true, simply because they're in a state of panic. So I think the best advice for most people is, like you said, Mike, just invoke your right to remain silent and your right to an attorney, and cooperate at a later time.
You're going to end up with maybe a ride down to the station or wherever, but listen, they're never going to be able to use your own words against you. And you listen, and again, not trying to get too far off of this. When you have a traumatic incident, you remember it. Your mind remembers it. What happened most traumatic first. It doesn't remember things in chronological order. And law enforcement officers, when they get into a shooting, state law in most states is 24 to 48 hours before you can even ask that cop what happened, because they want him to have 1 or 2 nights sleep to get his mind back in order, for everything to slow down, and for him to do it in chronological order. Just getting that stuff out of order chronologically is a big deal when it comes to criminal intent. So just say lawyer. Tell your kids and tell your family, lawyer.
Yeah. I do want to go on to the next story if I could. Oh, Charlie, go ahead, but we got to move.
No, that's fine. They do get into the story and say that a lot of times they think that a lot of times the civilians that are involved and actually do have to fire their firearm end up missing their target. And I thought that was kind of interesting because I love how they say that the police officers are professional, and they are. But police officers aren't always gun guys or gun guys and gals, and they don't go to the range as much as us as we do. So I don't know. This is kind of where it went off a little bit for me. We know from the mall shooting in Indiana a couple of months ago that the guy made a 40-yard shot. 8 out of 10 shots hit the target on at 40 yards. So that's where it kind of went off a little bit for me.
I do want to move on to our next story here. This one, we always hear only the police should have firearms. Everything would be fine if only the police had firearms. This story out of WANDTV.com. 3 Central Illinois men are facing the possibility of decades behind bars after detectives said they were busted for breaking into police cars. The Macon County Sheriff's deputies said in court documents it all started with a call for a stolen AirPods. Decatur police served a search warrant at a home in Cerro Gordo on August 26 for the AirPods reported stolen from Morton. Inside the home on North Adams Street, officers found a Macon County Sheriff's Office Remington shotgun and body armor. Officers say Blaine Marks was living there but fled when police arrived at the scene. Marks was finally tracked down August 30th at an apartment in Sullivan. Deputies also found Parker Walsh and 3 more stolen guns in the apartment. During the questioning, Walsh told detectives he and Manx were behind several car burglaries, and basically what they stole 2 ARs and shotguns out of patrol cars that were parked at private residences when the officers took them home at night. And a lot, and the story goes on to explain, and Mike, I'm sure you can agree with you would agree with this. A lot of rural or non-metro departments will have the officers take the cars home in case they get called in on short notice. They can just go directly to the patrol car. Problem is, you leave the patrol car in the driveway. and smash and grab. There goes the rifle. There goes the shotgun. All kinds of things can go missing. And if only the police should have guns. Well, here the criminal getting their guns from the police.
Yeah, listen, many agencies, large and small, at least down here in the southeast now, are the cars are their take-home cars as part of your compensation package. So it's quite common. They all have, and I remember when this started happening years back when the take-home car policy became a big thing. The securing of the firearms, securing of the weapons. Well, they have the locks, they have the cages, they have whatever it happens to be in the cars for either the shotgun or the rifle. So they finally relented and said, okay, go ahead and let them stay in there, because guys were taking their firearms into the home with them at the end of the night, and maybe they didn't own a safe. Like you said, maybe they're not a gun guy, so now I got to keep this shotgun laying in my house where I've got my kid with me. And if you think about it, it's a lot easier to break into a house than it is to break into a car and try and get something out of a lock, which was the point we made about this. The car was the more secure than the house was. Cars out in the open. Cars got visibility. It's the windows are high strength windows, whereas on a house I could just go punch a hole in a back window and be in and nobody will see it. So a lot of these are stored in the vehicles. Whether it's right or wrong, we tell people not to leave guns in vehicles all the time, but they're not. If it was in a locked storage box, it'd be one thing, and I know people like that have locked storage boxes in their vehicles and they store them in there because of what they have in the house. So. This is one of those darned if you do, damned if you don't, right? It's they're popping them out of the vehicles. I think at a minimum though, once this maybe the first or the second one happens, they'd put an alert out amongst the officers and then maybe pull them all and leave them in a safe somewhere. There's got to be a better set of reasoning and skills to keep these from happening. But luckily they caught him, and this guy's going to. Well, where was this, Illinois? So I was going to say he's going to go to jail, but probably not.
Yeah, Central Illinois, so it's not Chicago. There's a chance these guys are going to be staying in jail for a while.
Yeah,
I think these guys have a lot of guts to be stealing stuff out of police cars. Like, this seems crazy to me, like completely crazy. You're stealing the guns from the police. Oof, man.
Yeah, and I'm right now. I'm going to post a link in both the Facebook and the YouTube feeds. These guys are real winners. Their pictures are right up at the top of the story. And if you're watching live on the Polite Society podcast feed, go ahead and check that link. And these are some real winners. But then let's face it, police are not. If you're a policeman, you're going to make somewhere between $40,000 and $70,000 a year as a salary. These are not highly paid people that are going to be. If you're a policeman, you're going to. Where's that coming from? Somewhere between $40,000 and $70,000. I'm getting my own voice back at me. I don't know how this is happening. If you're a policeman, you're where's that coming from? Somewhere between $40,000 and $70,000. Gotta close some of this stuff down here because I'm getting my there now. It's done.
There we go. All right.
No. Anyway, you're not getting paid a lot of money to be a policeman, and you're not going to be living in the ritzy section of town. You're going to be living in the average parts of town, and a lot of times crime comes to the average parts of town.
Yeah, I think this article also shows that even if the gun grabbers got their dream and confiscated all the firearms from law-abiding citizens, criminals would find a way to get guns, and the only people that would have them were criminals and police, at least the ones who hadn't had their firearms stolen. So,
You get a comment, and I just looked over at Facebook, and apparently this happens from time to time. There are a lot of comments that are not coming into my software from the Facebook side. So Kevin Sona says, Mike, he needs a rum sample. So, and he's local to you, so you know.
Sure.
Then, let's get to this one. I can get put up. So let me put this comment up. Spartan 6 says, I find it extremely difficult to conceal carry an entire police officer. Am I the only one? Especially when they start squirming, man. When they start moving around, it makes concealment almost impossible.
A little uncomfortable.
Got to get you one of the wee ones, one of the lads.
Excuse me.
those are usually under the veteran officers, Mike.
The pocket Leo. Yeah.
Right.
Now from Ronco.
This
Good looking. We'll be back
this
to pick
may
you up later.
be the last story we get to. I'm getting this one off of AmmoLand, and this is one that Alex and I didn't have time to get to yesterday. This is a Dean Weingarten story. On August 15, 2019, the San Diego Gun Owners Political Action Committee, James Miller and others filed a lawsuit against then California Attorney General Becerra, challenging the constitutionality of the California assault weapon ban. As the case evolved, it became known as Miller versus Bona. And jumping down, basically that they won the lawsuit in front of Benitez, and it went to a 3-judge panel on the Ninth Circuit, and the 3-judge panel approved it. Went en banc. The en banc overturned it, and then going forward to June 21st, 2021, a 3-judge panel on the Ninth Circuit stayed Benitez's order. I jumped too far. On June 4th, I'm messing this up, guys. I'm sorry. On June 4th this year, the state of California fought the lawsuit with all the tools at its disposal. This is, of course, after the Bruin decision. Numerous motions were filed. Judge Benitez ruled that AR-15 rifles and others defined as assault weapons were both common and well suited for militia use and other use for individuals for defense of self and others, as well as other legal purposes. Therefore, the ban was unconstitutional. And then June 28th, following Bruin, the Supreme Court granted cert to Rupp versus Bonta, vacated the previous Ninth Circuit Court decision, remanded the case back to the Ninth to be reheard on August 1st. And I know I'm going in a real hurry here. The Ninth Circuit sent Miller versus Bonta back to Judge Benitez to be reheard under the specific guidance issued in Bruin. And basically where I'm going with this is that California wanted to delay their filing in this case now until 2023. And Judge Benitez said, you've got 45 days. You've got plenty of attorneys. You've got 45 days. And then there's 2 weeks for response after that. So we're looking at end of October. Benitez is going to be ruling on this. And I'm not an attorney. I know I really screwed this up royally. But, Alex, I'm going to ask you to read tea leaves. Is there any way to read this other than it looks like end of October that the California assault weapons ban goes away?
So I think it will go away. I don't know if it'll be the end of October because the judge could take some time to issue his opinion based on the submissions from the parties. But that's when this decision would come before him, and then he would come up with a written decision and issue that decision. I don't know how long he would take to issue that decision, but I think it would be relatively quickly. So I'd say before the end of the year, a decision is likely to come down in this case.
All right. So, and California and Maryland are the two most egregious assault weapons bans in the United States. Maryland, SAF is fighting in the Maryland one right now. And I forget what circuit that one's in, but I know there's an active federal lawsuit there. I'm hoping that both with post Bruin that both California in Benitez and then it'll, of course, no matter what happens, it's going to the Ninth Circuit. And then with what's happening in Maryland, I'm really hoping these assault weapons bans, and I'm going to use Charlie's assault weapons voice, in that they're gone in the very near future. I'm talking probably by the end of 2023.
Well, if this goes through, what are the chances it's going to spill over into the rest of the occupied territory states, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Connecticut? Because if we get California and Maryland, then that's what that's 20, 30% of the 8 states where Bruin is really taking effect, and then we can get rid of all the assault weapon ban nonsense in occupied territory.
Well,
Yeah, and the Supreme Court could ultimately decide this issue. It may not get settled, and likely isn't not likely to get settled at the circuit court level. So even if it's resolved in the Ninth Circuit in favor of protecting so-called assault weapons, another circuit may not make that decision. I think contrary to the Bruin decision, but nevertheless, if you have two circuits that disagree, the Supreme Court is likely to take up that issue, and I think would take it up relatively quickly. So I hope that we can get sort of a national resolution to this issue relatively soon.
well, and we certainly want. I personally would love to have the Supreme Court go into overdrive with what the makeup of the court we have right now. I would love to have them issue in just decision after decision after decision as quickly as they can. It's not really the way things work, but a guy can dream. We did just have them go into. We got a new Supreme Court justice here shortly after the Bruin decision, and I think they're going to be starting to hear oral arguments for the fall term here shortly. Right, Alex?
Yeah, I don't, without having their calendar up in front of me, I don't know exactly when it's going to start, but it's coming up soon, and they keep their calendar updated on the Supreme Court website. I can pull that up
I know.
pretty quickly.
The first Monday in October.
There you go.
They
All
start,
right.
always start the first.
So just after Gun Rights Policy Conference.
October 3rd.
Okay.
There you go.
And there it is, marked as an argument day.
So if things now October, so that these are, if I'm remembering, Bruin was argued in November, and decisions came in
June.
So I'm hoping they take lots and lots of cases, and let's face it, there's nothing in front of Congress right now to expand the court or pack the court. So and there won't be until at least November, and then November, everybody, is when we're going to have to be really on our toes. If there truly is a red wave, I want you to think back to the last time there was a red wave, and that was at the middle of Biden, in the middle of Obama's first term. They had a Democratic House, they had a Democratic Senate, and they had Obama. They lost both the House and the Senate in that first midterm. What did we get out of it? We got Obamacare, and we're still dealing with that. Be very, very vigilant after November this year. If there is a big red wave, look out, because the people that are still sitting in office will be there until January. They'll have 6 weeks to push through the most radical stuff they can get.
Yep. Lame duck session.
Yep. That's exactly right.
Here's a question. What is the real possibility that the Supreme Court would take a look at another gun case, 7 months after the Bruin case? I mean, it was 10 years from oh my God, Heller's been what, 14 years? It's been 10
Yeah.
years since the
I think it was 12
12,
between
12 years since
McDonald.
McDonald.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
McDonald
think it
was
was
2 years
12
after
between
Heller,
McDonald and Bruin.
I don't.
and
I don't think it would take that long because they're going to send. They sent down specific cases back with a new set of rules to look at it. So it's almost as if they're already looking at them and following them.
Yeah, and it may not be this term, but I don't think it would be anywhere close to the 10 years or more that we had to wait between the last two Second Amendment cases, and that's simply because of the composition of the court. When Heller and McDonald were decided, the court was very closely divided. Heller was a 5-4 decision, but with the addition of Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and Amy Coney Barrett, that changed the composition of the court to be more favorable to the Second Amendment. So I think the court is more likely to take up Second Amendment cases more quickly in the future.
Speaking of Supreme Court and Supreme Court cases, I can't get it on screen because my software didn't pick it up, but Rhonda Ezell commented, Liz Cheney is helping with all this mess. Yeah, Liz Cheney's already been voted out. She lost her primary in Wyoming, and so she's out in January. She cannot be elected in Wyoming unless she's elected by an absolute miracle by a write-in vote in November, and that will not happen. You know, I'll, I'll eat my socks if she wins a seat in November. It ain't gonna happen, folks. So
I think it's great that Rhonda's
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
It's perfect.
absolutely.
And now I'm getting my own voice back at me again in a delay. I don't know how this is happening. So all right. Well, I got that closed. I think what's happening is when I open up Facebook to look at comments, I'm getting a delay of my own voice coming back to me from the video feed. So all right, we are just about to the top of the hour. Why don't we do as we normally do as we get ready to close out the show? I'm going to have you all plug what you want to plug. I'm going to go in reverse order this time. Alex, I'm going to have you start. Any appearances you've done or anything you want to plug, man? Here's your time. Go ahead.
Yeah, I haven't been on too many other shows recently. I was on the Firearm Trainers podcast with Rob Beckman not too long ago to talk about insurance for firearms instructors. But we also discussed self-defense insurance, so-called, programs like ACLDN and some other options out there. So if you're interested in that, you can check that out. Firearms Trainers podcast with Rob Beckman. But I just want to encourage people, like you were saying, Paul. This fall it's really important to stay engaged because there's that period of time between the elections and the beginning of the year where progressives are likely to try to pass the most extreme measures they can pass. So make sure you're engaged. Make sure you're writing your representatives. Make sure you're involved with organizations like Second Amendment Foundation, Firearms Policy Coalition, and any other organizations who you think are doing good work, even at the state level. So stay engaged, stay involved. If you're interested in following more of what I do, I have a website at ooleylaw.com where I post on a blog occasionally. I'm also a firearms instructor with my family. We have a business here in Southern Indiana. It's o2gungroup.com if you're interested in that.
All right, Mike, your turn. Tell us what. Plug away whatever you want to plug, bud.
All right, let's do a little Arms Room Radio. It's armsroomradio.com. We're over, about 50 stations around the country. You can go there, see where we are, or just go to armsroomradio.com. Saturdays, 3 to 5 p.m. That's when we're out there. It's Eastern time for not that any other time zones matter, but it's 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern time. And then, of course, do the rundown at the rundown.us, Facebook, YouTube, OpsLens. That's 5 p.m. Eastern during the week.
All right, Charlie, what do you want to plug, bud?
All right. If we can get more people to watch Riding Shotgun with Charlie or listen to it, I'm in no time zone. I'm in every time zone. You can download the show. You can listen to it on podcast. You can watch it on YouTube. But we need to get people to watch Riding Shotgun with Charlie. This week, I'm putting out a new episode, and I have with me a firearm instructor here in Massachusetts. His name is Bill Dalby, and he is also with Target Nation, and they have 3D targets that they're selling and promoting and getting out there and trying to get in the hands of people, which are pretty good targets. So that's going to be coming out this Tuesday. So please check out Riding Shotgun with Charlie.
Well, if you have the home base in Massachusetts and the offices in Utah, you do hit all the time zones, man. And so
I get all the time zones.
All right. Let's go ahead, and on my part, I want to suggest everybody, we've got at the end of this month, we've got AmCon and Gun Rights Policy Conference coming up. Register for AmCon at AmCon, AMMCON.org. If you're in or want to be in Second Amendment media, you can register there. We're even giving away a Taurus handgun to one of the attendees at AmCon. So make sure you're registered. Make sure you attend AmCon. And Gun Rights Policy Conference, if you are anybody who's doing anything in Second Amendment media, you're at GRPC. That's where I met Alan Gura. He's the guy that argued the Heller case. That's where I first met Alan Gottlieb. That's where I met a whole bunch of the people that are on the air with me all the time, and where I met a bunch of you. And please, by the way, if you are going to GRPC in Dallas the end of the month and the 1st and 2nd of October, and you happen to see me and I'm not pulling my hair out and pushing buttons left and right, stop by, say hi. I'd love to meet you. So that's going to do it for us today right now. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thanks for commenting. I'm going to go ahead and set this one aside, folks.